All right, so what do we know of America or Louisiana in 1955? For the conditions for blacks in America?
They're still going through the Jim Crow era.
They're still going through the Jim Crow era. Somebody raise your hand. Tell me what the Jim Crow era is all about.
Segregation.
Segregation? What kind of segregation?
Race. Equal.
Separate but equal? And what do we call that? Whenever the Supreme Court said that it had to be done, what kind of segregation was that? Legal segregation, right. So you have legal segregation, Jim Crow era. What court case set that up?
No, Plessy versus Ferguson.
Yeah, Plessy versus Ferguson, right. So we're going to take a look back. Somebody, Mike, what is it like to be black in America? What you write?
Unfair.
Unfair?
Unequal.
Unequal.
Unfair and unequal.
Okay. Shwandrini, what was it like to be black in America? They called your names and you were beaten. Cedrian, what was it like to be black in America? It was harsh. They faced discrimination. Somebody else? Educated.
The whites have the good things and the blacks, they have the raggedy stuff.
All right, so the whites have the good things and the blacks have the raggedy stuff.
Underprivileged.
Underprivileged. Anybody else? Throw some words out. Poor. All right, so what we're going to do today is we're going to describe the role and importance of the civil rights movement in the expansion of opportunities for African Americans in the United States. And then we're going to propose and defend a specific point of view on the historical issue, which is the civil rights movement, and provide supporting evidence to justify that position. What does that sound like? What are we doing today? What are we doing? Right, we're doing a DBQ and essay. The civil rights movement reading. So this is where we're going to get the bulk of our information. Then we're going to do civil rights primary sources, timeline, and activity. Then you're going to do your civil rights document-based question, your DBQ with your extended essay. And then for evaluation, we have your barreling practice questions, a hashtag, and we're going to do questioning throughout. All right, so foundation. Get the index cards in the back. Pass everybody index cards. I want everybody to take this claim and write it down. Our civil rights claim. Were the changes made during the civil rights movement effective in guaranteeing rights of African Americans? So think about today. What's the situation for African Americans today? What are some situations that African Americans are faced with? The cops? What situation is that? Police brutality? Was that the point? They say it loud.
They're killing black.
They're killing black people?
Basically for no reason.
Basically for no reason, he said. What else do y'all see as situations for black people in America right now?
Jobs.
Job, what about
They
jobs?
want to jail.
Correct. No, excuse.
So jobs, who's that the project?
They want to jail.
They're going to jail how? Why?
For killing each other.
Yeah, black on black crime.
Black on black crime. Think they have more blacks in jail than white?
Yeah, of course.
For the same thing?
Yeah, whites get out of jail way faster than black.
So whites get out of jail way faster than blacks?
White people would have left from Britain, somebody got his niggas.
Okay. Okay, so those are situations we see now. So keep this claim in mind as we go through the lesson. Were the changes made during the civil rights movement effective in guaranteeing rights of African Americans? So we're considering what was going on back in the 1950s and 60s, and we're considering how it is today. So keep that claim in your mind, because you're going to have to make a claim at the end. Was it effective or was it not effective? We have that written down? All right, so we're gonna take a look back. Who is this? Jim Crow. That's Jim Crow. So Jim Crow is the representation of what they thought it was to be a black person. So back in 1896, when Plessy versus Ferguson, can somebody explain the situation with Plessy versus Ferguson? What happened?
It was
He was
like
trained.
he was a high yellow
Yeah.
black person. They mistake him for a white person and give him a white person.
If he have a little bit of black, then he's black. That's what they said.
Right, so he was 1/8 black, and he, like he said, he was a high yellow person. So if you have any part of you black, you would consider black. And he was on a train in New Orleans, and he was in the white section, and they told him to move to the black train. And then what happened? What did the Supreme Court decide?
Separate but
Separate but equal facilities.
Yeah.
So we can have a white train and a black train, but as long as we have both of them, they can be separate as long as they're equal. But looking at this picture, what do we know about separate but equal? Right. What if the white water fountain? What does the white water fountain look like?
Man got angels on it.
Looks like a funny girl.
Beautiful.
It's beautiful. We have baby angels and stuff. And what do the black people have to do? They drinking out the well. So would that be separate but equal?
No.
No, not equal.
Yeah,
So
be
separate
separate.
but not equal. Right. Separate but not equal. All right. Where we're going to get the bulk of our information for the civil rights movement is from the reading. So if you take out your chapter 9, turn to page 155. All right. So the Montgomery bus boycott and Martin Luther King. There was a type of protest. What type of protest did Martin Luther King stand for? Nonviolent. So just keep that in mind, that everything he did was nonviolent. And we're going to see the different types of protests that occur. But the Montgomery bus boycott and Martin Luther King were nonviolent protests. So nonviolent refusal to obey unjust laws. So everything nonviolent.
On August 28, 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. stood before the Lincoln Memorial at the March on Washington and addressed a crowd of more than 200,000 civil rights supporters. And perhaps
That black should use any means necessary to secure their rights.
All right, so what is Martin Luther King's stance? Nonviolent. And what is Malcolm X's stance? By any means necessary. And you look at his quote, he said, be peaceful, be courteous, obey the law, respect everyone. But if someone puts his hands on you, send him to the cemetery. So is he getting his message across?
Basically.
So what is he saying? If you're at a lunch counter and somebody comes and puts their hands on you, kill him. He's saying kill him. But what is Martin Luther King saying?
Don't resist.
Don't fight. You stay there and you resist and you use no violence, non-violence. So non-violence and by any means necessary, Malcolm X. What two types of movements do we see?
Nonviolent.
Non-violent and by any means necessary. Black Panther. What side are they on? By any means necessary. Black Power. They were on the by any means necessary. They wanted self-defense against violence. So if somebody put their hands on you, you fight back. And this picture represents the Black Power and the Black Panther movement. So if arm yourselves, have a gun, be ready. If somebody is violent against you, you be violent back. So that was the teaching during that movement. Rosa Parks in the bus boycott. What kind of movement was that? Nonviolent. The lunch counter sit-ins. Nonviolent. And the freedom rides. And what did Malcolm X stand for? By any means necessary. Right. So we're gonna go on to our checkpoint. your reading questions. Your first question, take a minute to answer. Which of the following actions would have been illegal following the Supreme Court's ruling in Brown versus Board of Education? So look at your multiple choice. Select the best answer. Which of the following actions would have been illegal following the Supreme Court's ruling of Brown versus Board of Education? Jacayla, what you have for that?
A white principal turning away an African American student because there is a separate school in town for black children.
Right. Everybody agree with that? So a white principal turning away the African American student because it's separate school in town for black children. Could they do that after Brown versus Board of Education? No, that couldn't be done. Our next question. Which of the following statements accurately describes Martin Luther King Jr.? What you got, Katie?
D.
What was D?
He advocated nonviolence as he led civil rights movement.
Right, he advocated nonviolence as he led the civil rights movement. And finally, what effects did the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and the 24th Amendment to the Constitution have on African Americans' ability to vote in the United States? So jot down the answer real quick. So what effects did the Voting Rights Act and the 24th Amendment to the Constitution have on African Americans' ability to vote in the United States? Popcorn out. What's that?
Many of them could be elected.
So many of them could be elected. So you have blacks that are able to be elected now. What else? What did it change?
No separate entrances.
No separate entrances
Voting.
for voting.
Poll tax.
It eliminated poll taxes. They could vote legally. They don't have to take literacy tests. You could run for the president if you want. What impact did that have on modern time?
Barack Obama.
President Barack Obama, right. So had those things not been passed, we wouldn't have had our first black president, President Barack Obama. All right, we're gonna move into our next activity, which is gonna be a civil rights timeline. Jacayla, can you pass out your primary sources? I want everybody to clear their desk. Jaleesa, can you pass out the timeline on the back? Are 20 different primary sources. So what is a primary source?
Something that was needed at that time.
Something that was done at that time. What are some examples of primary sources?
A newspaper.
A newspaper,
Magazine.
a journal, a magazine article, a picture, a photograph,
A diary.
a diary entry, a letter. So all of those are the primary sources. So a lot of what we discussed today are going to be covered in these primary sources. The Freedom Rides, the Little Rock 9. So you're going to have a bunch of examples of separate but equal facilities. So you're going to visit at least 8 primary sources throughout the classroom. So it's 20. So you visit at least 8. Name the source and place it in the correct spot in your timeline, and explain the significance of each event using at least one key concept from 5.4. So we've done our key concepts. We know Brown versus Board of Education, Little Rock 9, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, all of those key concepts. So when you explain your significance, you're going to include at least one of the key concepts. So for example, if I were going around, we'll take the back of my, who has the water fountain? So if I look at this primary source, it's gonna be a water fountain with a colored sign on top. It's gonna be a little black bar, and I noticed that his water fountain is on the outside, so it's outside the building. So I'm gonna put April 1938 colored water fountain. So I'm gonna put that on my chart as one of them that I visited. And when I do fill it in, I'm gonna do this last. I know this is my first date. I'm gonna put it in my first part of the timeline. April 1938, colored water fountain, and I'm gonna put my significance. And I put that It upheld Plessy versus Ferguson with separate but equal facilities. And y'all know me, I like to, put some color, so I just drew a little water fountain. That sparks my memory. So I'm gonna first put my event, the date, what happened, and then after I finish all of my events, visiting all of my primary sources, I'm gonna put them in order where it goes on the timeline with the significance. Everybody understand that? Anybody have any questions? All right, so y'all can get up and move around and visit at least 8 primary sources. Take your papers with you.
Which one?
All right, guys, while we're working, what are some of the events that you found to be most profound, or the most shocking, or something that you didn't expect to see?
Meeting the president.
Meeting the president? Who met the president? Martin Luther King. So why was that significant for you?
That's the first time I seen a black person meet the president.
The first time you see a black person meet the president. Okay, so that would be a really significant event. What's another event y'all found to be profound or significant?
The bombing of Arthur Shore's house.
The bombing of their house. So you know, hashtag what the problem is and how it's solved. The voting rights act.
Oh, for civil rights, we don't know.
Something that's gonna get people attention. Our entry gonna be about our intro. So we identified a major strategy or philosophy that guided people's actions during the civil rights movement. What do we know in some of the different strategies or philosophies people had? What are some examples? For example, Martin Luther King, what was his strategy? What was his philosophy? Peaceful, nonviolent. How about Malcolm X? What was his strategy? By any means necessary. What are some other ways? Look on your paper, some strategies.
Oh,
Black Panther Party. Look at y'all papers. What are some other examples of strategies we can use?
Black House.
Boycotting. Freedom Rides. Freedom Summer. So nonviolent protests.
Sit-ins.
Sit-ins. Pursuing legal change through legislation, court, and law enforcement. So all of these can be strategies that you're going to talk about. And then once you identify your strategy or philosophy, what's your next step?
Discuss 3 major events.
3 major events or demonstrations or speeches as example. So if I use nonviolent as my philosophy, what would be an example of a major event? Martin Luther King and what? His speech? The March on Washington. Right, so all of those nonviolent. And then, so how many paragraphs is that?
5.
That's 3 in the middle. 3 body paragraphs. 3 major events, demonstrations, or speeches. And what am I going to include in all of my body paragraphs?
Support from documents.
Support from documents, evidence. And what have we looked at today? We looked at evidence in the form of what? All of these, what do we call them?
Primary source.
Our primary sources. So we have evidence from the primary sources we looked at, and from all of the primary sources and secondary sources within our DBQ. And then what are we going to do? We're going to state our claim. And what is our claim?
The civil rights.
To evaluate the effectiveness of the strategy and effecting change in the matter of equality. So did it work? Did the civil rights movement work, or did it not work? And if you want to be on the opposite side and say it did not work, give me reasons why. Give me reasons why today you don't see it effective. You can use the things we used in the beginning of class: police brutality, the Black Lives Matter movement, and then the All Lives Matter movement coming behind it. So you can give me a battle. You can give me a debate. But you say if it's effective or if it's not effective. So everybody understands what you're going to do with your DBQ? So what's step 1 of DBQ?
Identify 1 major strategy or philosophy.
So we're identifying the major strategy. What's going to go in our body paragraphs? The major events. And then what are we going to do at the conclusion? We're going to state our claim. Right. Was it effective or not? And why? Anybody have any questions? 5. So you're gonna answer your documents first, then write your paragraph. This is gonna be for homework. Do them all.
Oh yeah, I like that.
Y'all can finish y'all hashtags. I'm gonna hang those up on the wall.
I love homework.